Yo, what is going on, everybody? My name is Dominic. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be telling you guys every movie that I watched in the month of September. If that sounds interesting, let's hop right into the video. So getting right into it, I started off the month by watching Jean-Luc Godard's 2 or 3 Things I Know About Her, and the main takeaway I take away from a lot of these films is the fact that a lot of the time Godard has a pretty similar agenda that he wants to fulfill with a lot of his films, at least in the 1960s, where I'm watching his 1960s films right now. And he kind of carries this agenda but presents it in a different enough way to make all of his films at least mildly interesting. So this one carried a lot of its similar themes and ideas that many of his other 1960s films carry, but presented it in a slightly different way, enough for me to definitely enjoy this movie and for me to just take in some more Godard goodness. Then I watched another Godard film called Weekend, and this one was a fairly underwhelming one. I've heard from a good few people that this is a very, very good one. It is up there with some of their favorites of his, and while I don't think it's a bad movie, I think it's still just pretty average. I don't really love it. However, the sort of one-shot kind of like traffic sequence near the beginning of this movie is really, really well done. But everything else was pretty difficult to get invested into. But it's still overall a well-made movie that was still fairly interesting at least most of the time. So I think this is a fairly average movie. Then I watched Yesterday, and this is definitely a new guilty pleasure of mine because I really don't think by any means this is more like well made than either of those Godard films that I said in the past, but I just had so much fun with this movie, and this is definitely one of those enjoyable ones. I don't know, movies that kind of base themselves around music, I guess I just enjoy them because I really, really love Rocket Man. I loved this, and I don't know, I just had a really good time with it. Then I watched my first Jacques Rivette film, The Nun, and it was very, very chilling and harrowing, and the atmosphere of this film was impeccable. I think Anna Karina gives probably her best performance that I've personally seen in this movie, and the whole premise of this film is absolutely devastating. It's just honestly pretty terrifying to watch. Like, even though it's not categorized as horror, this movie disturbed me and got under my skin a lot more than most horror movies do, to be completely honest with you, just because given the nature of being forced into something that you obviously don't want to do, and it basically you have to devote your life to, and it's just a terrifying concept of being forced into something that you just have to commit so much of yourself to, and also having these people who are in there with you being like just terrible people to you, and your like higher ups not liking you or, you know, condescending you and being, you know, a predator. One of them is a predator, and it's a pretty terrifying movie, to be completely honest with you. The whole thing is phenomenally well directed by Jacques Rivette. Everything is so precise, all of the marks and all of these sort of, you know, places, how the actors move and the dialogue is very reminiscent of theater. It is very exact. It's like an exact art form. The cinematography is fantastic. The sound design is some of the best I've ever heard. It is so incredibly well done, and the ending is just super chilling. Arguably one of the better endings I've seen in film, probably. Then I continued on with my Terrence Malick binge with A Hidden Life. This was one I was definitely looking forward to, and I think you could argue that this is his best looking film, maybe besides The Tree of Life, because obviously, as you guys know, Terrence Malick is generally well known for a lot of his like nature shots and stuff like that, of that nature. And even just with this film sort of taking place in the Austrian Alps just kind of lends itself to that style of filmmaking, because there are so many gorgeous shots of the Alps, of the landscape, of like these beautiful like rural villages. It is just eye candy, pure eye candy from beginning to end. And on top of that, it has a really compelling story about you know, maintaining your moral code during war, especially with this guy who gets enlisted to the Nazis. And he just refuses to fight for them because he knows how evil Hitler is and he just won't do it. And it kind of just how the movie goes about that, and it really is scary how bad things were back then and how bad, you know, Germany was back then and all that sort of stuff. And this kind of brings a light to that and makes a very compelling film out of it. Highly recommend this one if you are a Terrence Malick fan, for sure. Then I watched The Cranes Are Flying. If you want to hear my full detailed thoughts, definitely check out my review that I posted not too long ago. But at the end of the day, I think this is an incredible war film, probably my favorite war film of all time. And I think it's just incredibly well done from a technical standpoint and also a really interesting character study. Then I watched The Grizzly Man. This has been on my watch list for quite a while now, and it was honestly a little bit disturbing just to see how kind of messed up Timothy Treadwell was. He felt like he was like obviously part of nature with these bears, but I don't think he realized the gravity of the situation he put himself in. Like the situation that he got himself into in Alaska and constantly kept putting himself back into was not even close to safe. But he just, you know, he thought that he was okay there because he was going to be one with the bears. And it's a super interesting concept for a documentary, which is why I really enjoyed this. And I think that Werner Herzog captured a lot of this very well. I like a lot of the interviews he did. There's a lot of super bone-chilling stuff, like when he listened to the tape of Timothy dying, and like he seems for the most part like a guy that is not super like emotional. You know, a lot of his voice sounds pretty monotone. He looks like very stone-faced and like cold. But when he was listening to that tape and he was just like almost like crying and he was like super shook from it, that was wild. Like I was just frozen in the spot. This whole documentary was super interesting, had a lot of pretty creepy moments, but overall a really well done doc. Then I rewatched Fantastic Mr. Fox for the like billionth time. I think if I was actually counting, I'd be close to like 150 watches since it first came out, so that just shows you how much I love this movie. And also on top of that, it just became my favorite movie of all time again. I kind of have been going back and forth a lot, and I've come to this sort of realization that I don't really have one favorite movie of all time. And unfortunately with letterboxd, again, if you don't follow me on letterboxd, definitely make sure to do that. My username is always in the description of all my videos. But on letterboxd lists, there's no feature to make like ties or anything like that, so I have to have an individual 1, 2, and 3. But my favorite films right now, I have a 3-way tie between Fantastic Mr. Fox, Before Sunrise, and Playtime. So I will be referring to all of those as my favorite film because they all technically are. Regardless, Fantastic Mr. Fox kind of moved up into that spot once again. I just absolutely adore every little thing about this movie. It is just flawless. And I rewatched Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone because I'm going to have a little video planned for you guys where I'm going to be ranking the Harry Potter movies, but I'm also reading through the books right now, so I might have a separate video of ranking those books as well. So definitely be on the lookout for that sometime in the future. It won't be anytime soon because the books are quite long. I'm only on the 4th one right now, but we'll see what happens with that because I'm definitely going to keep reading through those. The movie ranking probably will be coming sooner, but I also have to make space for those, and it's also in the middle of October when I'm doing a lot of horror related stuff. But regardless, this is one of my all-time most rewatched movies, and I just absolutely love it every single time. Then I watched the documentary called You Don't Know Bo in my kinesiology class at school. Basically just after we finished a test, we had extra time, so we watched this documentary about legendary athlete Bo Jackson, who is arguably my favorite athlete of all time. I just think watching him play was super entertaining. He's just so athletic, and it was a really interesting documentary. I just don't think in terms of the actual like filmmaking of it or anything like that was anything special. Then I watched First Reformed finally, and I did really enjoy it. This is a film that at this point in time hasn't stuck with me a ton, but there are definitely some parts of it that have. The overall story, whenever I look back at it, it definitely doesn't age badly, but it isn't really a film that I see like increasing a lot with age. So again, a super well made movie. Ethan Hawke is fantastic in this, but the ending did kind of throw me off a little bit. The whole movie is taking a very like serious approach to all of this, and I really enjoyed that. It was super dark, cold, like lifeless, and I think that was perfect. The filmmaking decisions were amazing here, but the ending did kind of throw me for a loop. Who knows, maybe if I do rewatch this movie I will appreciate that part more, but aside from that, this is a fantastically well made movie. Then I watched Breakfast at Tiffany's, and I really enjoyed it. This is my first film that I've seen starring Audrey Hepburn, and I think she was absolutely amazing in this. I've rarely ever seen a screen presence that she had. She was such a unique presence on screen. She really commanded your attention in every single scene that she was in. She was always the main focus, and I really enjoyed that because I thought she gave a fantastic performance. And this movie was just super enjoyable and entertaining and just so much fun. And I'm definitely going to be watching more of her movies because I think she was definitely the best part of this film. But aside from that, it had an interesting enough story for it to become one of my favorite films of all time. Then I watched another Ingmar Bergman film finally, Summer with Monica, and I thought it was very well done. I don't think I necessarily love this movie quite yet, but I do respect a lot of what it was doing with its filmmaking. I think the story it was trying to tell was actually very good. In my review, I believe that I said that the first half was painfully uninteresting, but once they kind of got to that island, everything kind of picked up. And I do sort of stand by that, but I do respect the first half the more I look on this film in retrospect, because it is building important character traits for our main characters and some of our side characters. So I think that first half is vital, even if I don't enjoy it as much the second half. And then obviously the second half is just amazing, with obviously them being on this sort of island, whether it's going to try and steal food from people or whether it's coming back and, you know, having a baby when they're like just teenagers. It's just really well done, and I think the messaging that they're sort of trying to get across here about in my opinion, about like teenage pregnancy and why that's never a good thing when you don't have like a solid job, and you know, you kind of see them falling apart because they don't have enough money to support themselves, and they're always, you know, fighting, and that's just great stuff there from Ingmar Bergman. This film continues to grow on me the more I think about it. And I watched Free Guy. This is another film that I reviewed just the other day, actually. And if you want to check out my full thoughts on that, definitely make sure to check out that review. I think it was a pretty ranty review, but I think it would be pretty entertaining to watch. However, just to sum things up, I really did not enjoy this. It was kind of just a company product to make money, and it was very contradictory in a lot of its messaging. And I watched the 1950s War of the Worlds movie because it had been on my watch list for a while now. I know that one of my favorite YouTubers, Cinemassacre, absolutely loves this movie. It's one of his favorite films of all time. And so because I agree with a lot of his takes, I decided to watch it. And to me, this film was pretty underwhelming. I do agree with a lot of the stuff he says, with the effects being really well done. I love how the spaceships are not your typical just flying saucer. They have those little like hooks that come out the top with the little laser beams on top. The effects, again, are really good. The sound effects are also amazing. But other than that, there are no real compelling characters or story elements about this movie, and not really any stakes, considering that these killer aliens kind of have just landed on Earth, where, as cliche as it is to say in like 1950s sci-fi movies that they're going after the Pentagon and the White House and all that sort of stuff, like, it's super cliche to say that, but at least if you say that and, you know, they're gonna have to intervene with the military and the government, then there are high stakes. You know, you're about to destroy this whole country's like government buildings, and there's stakes there. But this, they kind of just land and, you know, fly around and destroy random things. There's no real sense of stakes, but I did have a pretty good time with this movie. Then I watched another Ingmar Bergman film, Persona, and this one definitely was a little disappointing because I was expecting to really love this one, and although expectations are the killer of enjoyment for the most part, so I do blame myself a little bit for that. I don't see myself enjoying this one I like a ton still, even though my expectations will be lower on rewatch. I just think that the concept is pretty interesting, and I think for the most part is well done, but I just was bored by a lot of this film, and that's really what all it comes to at the end of the day. The filmmaking is great, the interesting concept is really great, and some of the acting is also great, but if I'm bored by a good portion of the film, then most likely I'm not going to love it. And then finally, to end off the month, I rewatched Vertigo, and it's made its way into my top 15 of all time on rewatch. It got so much better. I just absolutely love this movie. I might make a review of this film soon, and it's just absolutely incredible. I love Jimmy Stewart in this. I love Kim Novak. The sort of mysterious elements of this film are really well done. I love Alfred Hitchcock's framing and use of color and lighting in this movie. This is probably, in my opinion, his best visual film, and the story is just incredibly gripping and investing, and the whole second half even is just amazing stuff. I love how it kind of dives deep into Scotty's psyche and just into the sort of ugly human nature and just how gross we can be as human beings. Obviously taking advantage of this poor girl because she looks like someone that he loved before, which, you know, if you've seen the movie, yeah. But like, it's just such a horrible thing to do. It's like misogynistic, like why, just why? But at the same time, that's what makes his character all that more compelling, because you're rooting for him, but you're also like, okay, dude, what the hell are you doing? Like, he has that sort of duality of admirable qualities, but also kind of just gross human nature. It's a really compelling movie with a great mystery aspect to it, and it also has one of the best endings of all time. And that is going to do it, guys. That is all the films I watched in the month of September. I didn't watch a whole ton, but that will change in the month of October. I'm kind of back into the groove of watching movies. I'm going to be doing a ton of horror related stuff in the month of October, and I've already watched like 5 movies this month, a bunch of horror movies. Going to be coming out with reviews, and I'm planning on doing one video where I kind of do a big review and ranking of all of the George Romero Dead films. So that is Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead. So definitely be on the lookout for that one. I got a bunch of stuff planned, but at the end of the day, if nothing else, I'm going to be coming out with that George Romero trilogy video and just a bunch of solo horror movie just reviews. So if you're excited to see that, definitely make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. But that is it for this video, guys, and I will see you all in the next one.